Sean here with BaseMint Comics. It is the weekend, and that means it's time for another Corner Box Classics. But this weekend is special. It is the 40th anniversary of my comic book shop. And so, if you are just a watcher of the Corner Box Classics and not the normal Wednesday videos, on the Wednesday videos, I pedal up to the shop with my son. Like I have always pedaled up, hence why I always talk about like, oh, if I had picked these up, I would have been riding my bike. I still do that. I have always done that. Rain, shine, snow, whatever. And normally I have been giving my old band from 20 years ago's songs a second life by overlaying them in the little trip footage. So last chance, 2 minutes and 43 seconds. I think that's the length of that tune. So if you don't want to deal with that, you can just skip ahead 2 minutes and 43 seconds from here as we pedal up to the shop and celebrate with cake and a big sale where back issues were 16 cents. Not all of them, but there's a plethora of dollar books that are then 16 cents. And this is where at Halloween we put a whole big tent at the end of the driveway, decorate it, and pass out, put a spinner rack out there full of comics, let the kids pick out comics and pass out candy, listen to spooky music, have a great time. And this is usually where I stock up on those issues, because what child does not want his choice between a Milky Way or a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup while he enjoys the 90s classic Turok #1. So let's hit the trails, come back, and then we'll have tea and we'll talk about books from the end of September 1982. All right, so we are back. The tea is made. Oh, and it's even in a mug of the X-Men riding a bicycle, which is very on brand for the channel. Let's see. If you like that song, it is not available on any streaming services because my buddy Jeff, the singer of the band, hates Spotify with a passion. But I hear McGroovy is selling copies on the street corner, bootleg copies on the street corners in Scotland. The sale was great. Henry enjoyed the cake very much. I did not partake. He had a piece for me. And the thing that I love about the 16-cent bins when it comes to like the back issues is they like dust off a ton of bins that you don't normally get to go through during the shop. And so I have been, the thing is like, it's so easy to just like, oh, let me throw down a long box and let me fill it up. And so I grabbed all of these for the trick-or-treaters. And then there were, there were about 65 issues that as I go through it, I'm kind of like I grab things where I'm like, oh, I think I might need this, and I'll grab a couple copies of it because I know I'm just gonna like, it's just, you know, I've got like probably 4 long boxes in my garage of Halloween comics where I kind of just go through them. And I've only ever had, there was years back at our old house, I had a parent absolutely lose their mind on our front porch because they thought I was passing out a religious pamphlet. And I'm like, no, man, it's a Daredevil comic. But the good outweighs the bad. Like there were a couple kids at our old neighborhood. My wife like felt so bad the first, because we moved in August into this house, and when Halloween rolled around, we weren't quite, it was like end of August, we weren't quite settled here, and we moved here during the pandemic. So we were like, we'll wait, we'll just hang out on Halloween and not pass out candy that year, because we were still getting like everything settled in here. It took forever. And we wanted to, like, when we, you know, like a, you know, I'm losing it. Like the Gilmore Girls, when Rory presents herself to the Chiltons or whatever, I don't know. We wanted to make a splash, you know? So I wanted the whole, we put up like a canopy tent, set up a table with carved pumpkins, you know, candles, blah, 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 with a bunch of bowls of candy so the kids can pick from. My wife is a very like, oh, I want something sweet, I want something chocolatey, you know, so there's a mix where they can just, you know, take what you want. And then I have one of the spinner racks where the kids can spin, and adults. I don't, you know, whatever, man. They're for everybody. And so far, so good. It's been a hit. One sec. I know you're probably asking yourself, like, Sean, you only really read Marvel, do you? And I do, when I am picking up the back issue stuff, I do grab a smorgasbord of everything. There's a Savage Dragon #1 in there. There's a bunch of Adventures of Superman. There's a bunch of Batman adventures in there, because I get it. Like, not everybody's like me and a Marvel loyalist. Yeah, but when we moved from that old house, my wife was bummed because she knew that come Halloween, she was like, that first Halloween when we were here and we weren't doing it, she was like, man, there are a bunch of kids in our, because they used to, like, they'd round the corner and they'd see our house and they'd be like, it's the comic book house, and they'd all get excited. And now that happens here, obviously. Like, I've actually had a couple kids that have, like, circled back days later and been like, do you have any more? And it's like, yeah, first one free, kid. And so, you know, it's a good time. Anyways, so I always appreciate the shop's big anniversary celebration. They all, you know, they saved the cake for Henry if we're going to be late. It goes the whole weekend. It's a big sidewalk sale. It's all exciting. People dress up. One of my favorite things that the store does, not that anyone here cares, but my favorite thing that the store does is on the weekend of the celebration, they wear shirts with the store logo in them, but the back is individually personalized 1-star Yelp reviews for the shop, and they are outstanding. It's hilarious. It's super funny. Anyways, so that was Celebration. So, you know, it was a good time pedaling up there. You know, I got a ton of stuff that I wanted to. Like when I went through the books, I was like, oh, okay, like, you know, this was obviously all, like, a good chunk of them, about 200 issues were strictly for the Halloween thing. And then I managed to find a solid chunk of the latter half. I have the first half of Dan Jurgens and John Romita Jr.'s Thor run from the late 90s. And then that I was able to find a ton of the latter half of that. And then one of the things that I was missing from my collection that I've been searching for is early issues of like the early 2000s Spectacular Spider-Man, where it was like, I think Paul Jenkins and Humberto Ramos was on art. And I didn't have like the first 20 issues of that, and I found a sizable chunk of those. And then there was some Avengers Celestial Quest stuff that I'd found in there, which I have in trade, but I wanted to get rid of that trade. And then one of my all-time favorite stories is Spider-Man Blue, and I got that in a hardcover, and I have that in a hardcover where Jeff Loeb wrote a very nice missive in it to me, and so I will always cherish that hardcover. But I was able to find 4 of the 6 actually multiple copies of each of these issues. So I was pretty jazzed about that. So now I'm like, oh, well, I'll track down issue 1 and 6. So I also have the single issues because you know, hardcovers and trades are great. But I love ads, the time capsule of like that time. Obviously, like that's what Cornerbox Classics is all about, and that is something that I have been doing for years now in my own reading, long before I ever kicked off the channel a year ago, which was a year ago this Friday. I've talked about it on the Wednesday video. Yeah, so there was that, and I've already talked about that for too long, but that's what I do. I ramble. There's no plan. There's no script in front of me. I just ramble. And I go. Sometimes it works. Most of the time it does not. All right. So, if I was not 11 months old on September 28th, 1982, and I had been, let's say, the idea behind the Cornerbox Classics things is like, when I got into comics, it was it was literally at the exact same time that I got into music. And then, like, you know, obviously music had been a part of my life, my whole life, but it was the first time where it was like, I found my thing and not like my older brothers or my older sisters or my parents' thing. It was the first time I found my thing, and I was finding my like musical voice at the same time. So comics and music are very intertwined. And then, you know, I've talked at length about, I did an X-Men read through where I read every X-Men book, you know, not just X-Men, but like Excalibur, X-Factor, every miniseries, all that stuff, in order. And I only allowed myself to listen to time period specific music while reading those issues, just to see if you could sort of feel like the pop culture thing sort of influence one or the other, etc., etc. Anyway, so that's a huge setup to say that if I had been a teen and I was pedaling up to the shop on September 28th, 1982, I would have been blasting the hell out of Love My Way by the Psychedelic Furs, which, if you didn't skip through that song, I think you could tell that the Psychedelic Furs were a very big influence. And there is a personal connection because my pals and Sponge, their second record, they have a tune called I Am Anastasia, and Richard Butler from the Psychedelic Furs sang background vocals. So that's very cool. Psychedelic Furs are a fantastic band. Anyways, so only $4. And this is still probably going to be an hour-long video. So the first book that I would have pedaled up the shop and picked up on September 28th, 1982 was Daredevil number 190, Resurrection, Written and penciled by Frank Miller, inks and colors by Klaus Jensen, and letters by Joseph Rosen. And this cover by Frank Miller and Klaus Jensen. And now that I'm thinking about it, I question those credentials, because when I was reading this last night, double-sized issue, man, something's going to happen. And this isn't a double-sized issue like they're double-sized issues now. This isn't some bait and switch. This is straight up the A-team writing and drawing this thing for all of the pages. There's no reprint in the back. There's no backup story. This is straight Miller and Jansen for however many pages it is. And it opens up, like I was like looking at that panel. Elektra, it opens up with a little prologue, which is obviously in the past of Elektra. And I got to hold this up longer because I've gotten complaints that I'm too, he knows who he is. That I'm too fast with the showing off the things. Anyways, I stared at this panel of Elektra for far too long. My wife would have grown concerned if she had been in the room with me. And I was like, that is a fucking beautifully drawn panel. And then there is this double page spread where she is explaining climbing up this mountain. She does not succeed. And then it is revealed that she is trying to train with Stick in the past and his gang, and they do not believe that she is worthy. And she goes through the whole process of this. It is beautifully drawn, and you're seeing like him basically be like, you're not ready for this because you've got too much rage, too much hate, so on and so forth. And you're obviously fighting against something. And again, like, I'm not saying anything that anyone doesn't know about the Miller Jensen Daredevil run, but it's the best of the best. And so at this point, she's gone because at the end of it, I'm getting all over the place because I'm just sort of looking at. So she eventually like gets kicked out and then sort of recruited by the Hand, and they have her in a like horrible, she winds up killing her old sensei, and it is a bum out. And then we cut to Matt, and I cannot remember the dude's name, but he's Stick's like right-hand man, who is also at in the whole Elektra thing, but for right now I am blanking on his name. And the Hand Ninjas are digging up Elektra. And I wanted to call out this page right here with the tombstone. I just love it. I'm like, holy smokes, that is badass. And everyone knows that I love a good title page. And this is where my little notes where it said that Frank Miller did the pencils are off, because here, this tombstone clearly says that Klaus Jensen did the pencils. And so this sweet Elektra panel from, like, hats off to Jensen, man. Like, great inker, but also a fantastic penciler. Like, this book is obviously, you know, out of this world. So then Black Widow joins the fray, and your Sticks dude is not, why am I can't find anywhere on the page where they actually call this dude by name. But he is not thrilled that Black Widow is there. At all. Yeah, so basically, like, the plan didn't work, and Elektra has been taken by the Hand. Stone, that was the ninja's name that works with Stick. And so then we cut to the Kingpin's penthouse, and we can see this dude scaling the wall. He wipes out the Kingpin's guards, goes to take on the Kingpin. Kingpin quickly disposes of this dude, and then as the rest of his guards come in, he realizes, like, there is a mutiny going on, like, things are getting bad, and we need to figure out a solution for this. Then Daredevil shows up there and explains that, like, he needs the Kingpin's help finding the Hand's hideout, which is, like, never good when Daredevil has to team up with the Kingpin. So he goes looking for him, and there is this great page where Daredevil goes to the warehouse where he needs to, you know, seek out what he's looking for, and takes out Turk here. And Turk is one of the most fantastic supporting characters in all of Daredevil. Like an absolute scumbag. And I remember, I think we got sidetracked. This sort of always happens to the missus and I. Like, we finished the last season of Daredevil Born Again, and the Netflix Daredevil popped up right on afterwards. And I think we were just so jazzed by Born Again that we were like, we're going to start Daredevil again. That didn't last. But watching the first couple episodes of it, I was like, oh yeah, Turk's a piece of shit. But you forget, because he's, in the comics, he's portrayed as such a dope. There were some very scuzzy things in the beginning of that, that they looked by. So inside the warehouse, Murdoch obviously makes quick work of these dudes, and it is beautifully drawn by Jensen. And then it cuts to the church that Matt was just given the address to after beating those guys to a pulp, where the Hand is doing the Hand thing, where they are trying to resurrect a dead Elektra. And that is when Stone and Murdoch show up, along with the Black Widow. And then it is page after page of them taking on the Hand. Matt senses a heartbeat. Stone, he sort of needs Matt's help, and Matt is immediately distracted by thinking that Elektra is alive. So he starts to do the hands on her thing. Stone is getting more and more pissed as they are fighting. And this goes on. Stone's about to decide to kill Elektra when he senses that she has been cleansed by Murdoch, purging the badness out of her. So it is left with Stone taking off. Don't know where Elektra is. I'm assuming that he probably has her. And then the epilogue is shadows like the beginning of the book, where she actually climbs the thing, the unscalable wall. And you get another, that's pinup worthy. So Elektra is, and then another one. That's some good stuff. Dude, it is legitimately a book that I could sit down immediately after reading it and read it again. That is Miller's Daredevil is just, I know that there's I think the craziest thing for me is every time that I do this, there's a book where I'm like, man, this is the best book on the stands out there. And then I realized that I'm saying that about a ton of stuff from then. It was such a good time. I know, a lot of the pals in the community, I love the time period that I grew up reading comics in. I know, it gets a lot of guff, but I was it was, it was my gateway, and I loved it. But I can't even imagine. I lucked out. I loved having the toys around when I was into comics too. And I know at this time, we haven't hit Secret Wars yet, so the best you could do is probably cut up your comics and use them as paper dolls. So the trade-off there, since I obviously am a big Marvel toy guy, as we discussed I think I talked about it in the Wednesday video, building old bases and all that sort of stuff. That might have been the last. Anyways, they all bleed together to me. And I just assume, much like comic book continuity, that everyone just watches every issue, because that's what I do to the channels that I follow. All right. Next, Dazzler number 23, Fire in the Night, released September 28th, 1982, written by Danny Fingeroth, pencils by Frank Springer, inks by Vince Colletta, letters by Janice Chang, and colors by Don Warfield, with a cover by Frank Springer. I have said it quite a few times while reading this, but Frank Springer, his specialty is drawing females. He's very good at it. And really, I don't know if it makes sense. I'm not an artist, so me trying to explain art, sometimes it's this whole thing is just me talking about stories and comic books that I love, and not really breaking down any type of true artistry behind that, But there are moments in this book where, like, just there's this shot of Dazzler right here, right? And it's simple, but there's something elegant about the dude's lines. Like, they're just super clean. Like, I don't know. It's just, he's got it. Anyways, this book opens up with Dazzler waking up to her apartment being on fire. And so last issue, her, like, stepsister that she didn't know about showed up unannounced. And so basically the two of these gals gabbed the night away and caught up on their respective lives, being, like, obviously, you know, they've got shared lineage, you know, but they weren't together. So they're obviously shooting the breeze about that. So her sister winds up crashing on the couch, and she wakes to this all happening. And it's her sister tossing on the radio so she can do her Dazzler thing, and slowly becoming like, she witnesses her running around saving people in the building. She, like, which was a really slick move, she, like, douses a couple blankets in the sink so they're wet, wraps them around her and her sister so that they can get out of the fire building, you know. And then they stop. She helps other people. She witnesses her use her powers. And, like, Dazzler is, of course, concerned about this. But her sister is like, oh, no way. Like, this is, she's like, you're special, Alice, and you've got power and the heart to use it. And I think you're wonderful. And she kind of even comments where she's like, I thought that she just palled around with the heroes. I didn't realize that she was actually one of them. And so I really liked the fact that her sister was into it and not like, you know, how I talked about with the Edna thing in the Marvel team up with Beast in the last Cornerbox Classics, where, like, she was kind of like anti-mutant, which was out of character for her. But I sort of liked, especially because, and I know that I try to attack these books as though I don't know what's coming down the line, but for anyone who is, like, not that familiar with the X-Men thing, mutants are not, which is surprising, but at this time in continuity, they are not well known to the public. Like, the public just sort of thinks that they're rumors. And it isn't until right there, in the Dazzler graphic novel by Jim Shooter, Dazzler the movie, that mutants are sort of put into the world, like, presented to the world. That's how Dazzler the movie is sort of done. And it's actually Dazzler through this that kind of, like, that's part of the reason why she shows up with the X-Men in the 80s Outback era, is because she is literally the, like, public enemy number one of mutants, because she's sort of the mutant that is presented as, like, this is bad. Anyways, point is, I don't know if I am surprised that that's not more. I know that the Dazzler story gets, like, written off as this, like, joke. And it sort of bums me out, because there is actually quite a bit to this character. And I do find it interesting that her whole thing is, like, she doesn't really want to be a mutant. And then she is accidentally put in a position where she is kind of the one that lets the world know that mutants are real. Anyways, turns out that fire was started by this dude. A little bit of arson is happening here. Yeah, this fella with a flame on his suit. Dead giveaway. And in this, the landlord of Allison's building is basically, he shows up and is pissed off about everything that's happened, and, you know, basically like the typical creepy landlord. Then we cut over to what is now being known as the Sisterhood of Evil Mutants, which is just Rogue, Mystique, and Destiny. And basically Mystique and Destiny are sitting Rogue down, and they're like, we're not going after Angel anymore. We've done enough damage to that dude. And we're also just going to leave Allison alone. And, like, like, Mystique is basically like, listen, we've done like everything that we could to Allison. Let's drop it for a little bit. And Rogue isn't so sure at this point, which I think that that Destiny would pick up on, but she doesn't. So then we get to a television taping for Allison doing a performance, and she has called Luke Cage and she is called Power Man and Iron Fist. I always want to say Luke Cage, not Power Man, and then I say Iron Fist and I feel bad. It's like when you start writing a word in cursive and then you switch it up and you're like, that I shouldn't have done that. That's idiotic. I always want to say like Luke Cage and Iron Fist, and then it should be Luke Cage and Danny Rand, or Power Man and Iron Fist, because his name is, but I'm just so used to saying Luke Cage. Anyways, so they're having a full-on conversation about like what is going on, and she's sort of explaining like, I remember meeting you guys, you know, and like hired you kind of to just do some like she's taking a case of like, I've got some friends who are heroes, the X-Men, the Avengers, but I feel funny asking them for help. You guys are heroes for hire, and I like that. So she's not pulling any strings amongst her friends. And then all of a sudden the studio catches on fire, which is, you know, now that the heroes for hire are there, it's a pretty good thing to find out. So the group is all trying to get out of this, and that's where we get our, you know, you get Power Man being Power Man and Iron Fist being Iron Fist, and you get your Beefer, which is by far my favorite band member name of Allison's band. Yeah, so then we've got this dude is obviously the one who has been starting the fires. He's going after Allison. Angel is hilariously on the run in this, which, like, the portrayal of, as much as I love the Dazzler book, Angel is entirely confident in X-Men, competent in Champions. He will inevitably be competent when he shows up in Defenders, but he is just a bumbling idiot in Dazzler, and I don't get, like, does Danny Fingerroth have some problem with Warren Worthington? Then we get Allison at her sometimes boy pal's apartment, lamenting about all of the stuff that is going on with her, and kind of a little bit worried, like, hey man, she thinks Allison doesn't realize that it's this arsonist dude. She thinks it's Rogue and the Sisterhood of Evil Mutants, even though earlier in the issue they were like, we're done messing with Allison. So she legitimately thinks it's Rogue trying to kill her, which is why she's like hired Power Man and Iron Fist. And so now she's telling Ken, like, I don't want to endanger you. Like, holy shit, they just burnt down the studio that I was working in. Like, I got to stay away from you. And he's like, no, I can handle it. And so that is when she winds up stumbling upon the whole business. Like, she basically, like, goes to see Power Man and Iron Fist, and then overhears, like, the dude who has hired the arsonist talking about doing this. And she lets it be known by accidentally moving the door that she is there. And so they take her out, and she inevitably, because this dude decides to trot around in a motorcycle, once the motorcycle starts, that makes enough noise for her to use her powers, and she kind of beats him up and gets rid of him just as Power Man and Iron Fist show up. And then it ends with Rogue disobeying Mystique and Destiny and being like, you know what? I'm not going to leave Allison alone. So, again, I know the book gets a ton of crap for being, like, silly. And I know that part of it is, like, the music thing is a big thing for me, like getting the ins and outs of her trying to like book gigs and things going wrong. I like that aspect of it from a personal perspective of having like lived been living that. And then, I mean, it's no surprise, like, comic books are soap operas, and you know, who doesn't love a good soap opera? The third book I would have picked up, Ka-Zar the Savage, number 22, Shanna the Savage, released September 28th, 1982, written by Brian Elliott Jones, pencils by Ron Frenz, inks by Mel Candido, letters by Janice Chang, colors by Don Warfield, and a cover by Ron Frenz and Armando Gil. And it's a full-on, pretty good. And I also, I never talk about this, but in Ka-Zar, they do these, like, that's Wheezy Simonson, but she's Louise Jones at this point. And they have a whole editorial thing that they do with photographs. It's pretty, like, it's not, like, laugh out loud funny. It's, like, cute funny, you know? You know the difference. And I just kind of, it's a nice little touch. Like, that would be, that's the type of stuff I would like to see more of in, like, that, like, where we talk about, I often talk in new books where, like, certain things have been lost structurally when it comes to story-wise. Certain things have been lost from pencils to digital. But one of the things that I feel like is lost because of social media is, like, you don't really get, like, I mean, I guess they do little, like, in the new books, they do little, like, blurbs and interviews, but there seemed to be a lot more meat to the old bullpen bulletin, and I do miss that. So this opens up with Ka-Zar's tombstone being engraved, which is a huge bum out, as he has passed on. And Shanna is there with Peter Parker in this, because he's obviously been around the past few issues, and so he's trying to be there for her. She is just kind of, you know, on the subway, just amongst the people, grieving, you know. It cuts back to her finding out about this, about Kevin dying, and then we cut back to, she winds up showing back up at, like, she goes to Peter Parker's apartment, and I love this. I have to call this out because I love that this, to me, is a really great sign of how good editorial was back in the day, because Ka-Zar, guesting Peter Parker, still has the Indian statue, which I have mentioned multiple times in issues of Peter Parker and Amazing and so on and so forth. So Pete's trying to be there for her, do the good thing, give her coffee, and Shanna, as he's doing the, you know, he's kind of giving her the Peter Parker pep talk about dealing with death. Not the great power, great responsibility, but just, you know, hey, we're going to honor Ka-Zar. And she smacks the coffee out of his hands and is like, oh, come off it, Parker. It's not him you want to talk about. You're a nice guy, Peter, but you've been wanting to do more than hold my hand from the minute you set eyes on me. Which is like, yeah, probably, with you running around in that outfit. And so she then grabs Peter and kisses him. And, you know, we've got this whole thing going on. And he's like, I'll admit, I've been wanting to kiss you. I'm human. I've been wanting to hold you and caress you and do a whole lot more. Which I'm like, damn, Pete, chill. And, you know, he's like, but answer me this. You're standing here passionately kissing me. How many of us are in the room? Huh, Shanna? How many of us are there? And obviously, like, he's expressing the fact that she is grieving. She then starts trashing Pete's apartment in her grief fit, which just pissed me. I was like, listen, I get that you're upset, but my man Peter's on a budget. He's on a budget. You think he wants that fucking Indian statue? And it's just there to take up space, because otherwise it would just be a milk crate and a sewing machine for when the Green Goblin pumpkin bombs the shit out of his costume. Don't throw shit around in his house, Shanna. So then, you know, she sort of cries herself to sleep. He puts the old washcloth on her forehead, nursing her back. And then they get a call at Peter's apartment, and he is like, oh, this isn't a good call. And she deduces that they're going to kill Zabu. And so she then hightails it out of Pete's apartment, hops in a cab, The cabbie's giving her grief. It's not going fast enough, so she punches him out. And I'm like, okay, somebody has to calm Shanna down. And then she like basically throws the cabbie into the back of the thing, and she takes off. And I love this grouping of panels of her zipping through traffic. And it is 3 pages of this as the cops catch up to her. And it's just really good stuff, because the one cop is pissed that she's like, because she kind of sort of, you can see in this panel where she gets him boxed in. And so the cop's pissed. He follows after her, and they run into the cabbie, and he's obviously traumatized from the driving that was done there. So she shows up at the morgue, and they explain that Zabu is dead, which I'm like, Ka-Zar's dead, Zabu's dead. Are they canceling this book? And so then she goes, which this is like a thing that I've noticed stylistically only in this Ka-Zar book, where there's like lots of stuff, you know how like the Peter Parker sometimes when he's like web swinging around is done in different shades. This is all same, but there's a lot of like dialogue in like what would normally be the size of sound effects. It's just an interesting thing that I've noticed in this book. So then it cuts to Spider-Man shows up to the insane asylum that she has been locked in on behalf of his pal Peter Parker, and busts her out, takes her back to Peter's apartment. Then Spidey does the quick change, and by the time that he's back, she's already out of her straitjacket, and she is off to kill the people she believes responsible for the death of Zabu and Ka-Zar. And she goes to do that. I am drawing a blank on the woman that she thinks this is for some reason. I'm really bad about that. But then it is quickly revealed to not be the blonde lady that was in the last issue. That was all over Kevin Plunder. And that is the doctor that said that Zabu was killed, and they wind up putting a bullet in Shanna. And that's where that ends. So, intrigue, as I'm now assuming that maybe Kevin and Zabu are not dead, but there is something bigger at play here. Anyways, I've said it. Art's great in this book. Writing's good. I bought this hoping that I would get more Ka-Zar in the Savage Land, not Crocodile Dundee, if you know what I mean. Not to say that that's a bad thing. It's just not what I wanted out of a Ka-Zar book. So I am delighted that I enjoy it, and I have been enjoying it, but it does sort of get a ding, because like she even talks about it when she's having the conversation. I sort of glossed over that. When she's having the conversation with Pete, she sort of explains the first 21 issues to him of like, oh yeah, we were in this other place that wasn't really the Savage Land, and then we wound up in New York, and I was like, that sort of hammered it home for me, where I was like, yeah, this entire book, none of it's really taking place in the Savage Land, and that kind of bums me out. But what are you gonna do? All right, last issue that I would have pedaled up to my comic book shop on September 28th, 1982 to pick up would have been Marvel 2-in-1, number 95. The Power to Live, The Power to Die. Written by David Anthony Kraft, pencils by Alan Kupperberg, inks by John DeAgostino, letters by Diana Albers, and colors by George Roussos, with a cover by Ron Wilson and Chick Stone. Okay. This opens up with Thing being an absolute asshole to a mailman. He's a real jerk to this mail guy. Just slams the door right in his face after he gets Alicia's package. And so she gets this package addressed to her, and Ben isn't feeling great about it, so he's like, let me open up the letter and let me figure this out before you go messing with it, you know, which like could be read as him being like nice and helpful, but sort of comes off clunky and controlling a little bit, just a little bit. And so as he's reading this, and he's like, something about this smells rotten to me. There's an awesome explosion of sinister energy as she opens up the package, and she all of a sudden grabs this hood hat thing, crown, I don't know, and she puts it on, and she's like, I'm being called, summoned to a higher duty, a duty I cannot ignore. I must assume my rightful place in the new pantheon as the bride of Nephris. And like, thing runs after her. She mind blasts him through a wall, which I'm like, she's not getting her safety deposit back on this apartment. And then she takes off. So Ben picks himself up, dusts himself off, and he's like, I gotta figure out where she's going, or maybe I lost her for good. He thinks that he can track her with some of the stuff, like the letter, but the letter disintegrated. And he's like, but where does a guy find information about ancient Egypt? Wait a minute, it's a long shot, but I gotta try it. And we cut to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And so Ben's stomping around looking for an expert there. Comes across this lady, and I don't know how, like, she's just drawn, I don't know how to explain it, but it was just an interesting look where, like, you immediately, I don't know, like, she looked mean old Hollywood to me, and so she sort of explains, like, she's kind of like, I don't got time for your stuff. And then he mentions the Bride of Nephris thing. And she all of a sudden, like, she's like, oh, I'm in. And she runs off to go grab something. Ben thinks that she's giving him the brush off. And she's then like, oh, no, I'm going to help you. There was never any doubt about that. We Templeworths, who I guess is the person, working in the Metropolitan Museum of Art here, that understands all of this, the so-called ancient Egypt expert that Ben was looking for. We have a tradition of assisting anyone in need, even disruptive types, such as you so-called superheroes. Tell me, have you seen this headdress before? And she shows him that exact headdress. And then she's like, that hat was stolen from our museum by this man. And she's like, I fear your Alicia might be great in danger. This man is Gamal Hassan, who until very recently, he was the museum's chief curator for this division, and I was the assistant. He is brilliant, the foremost expert in this field, but he's mad. And so basically, like, Ben's like, all right, got to get to the bottom of this. And she's like, wait. She's like, did you mention that your friend is both blind and an artist? And he's like, yeah. And she's like, I fear danger exists that not only jeopardizes your Alicia, but the world as well. Hassan seeks a power stone in some Egyptian ruins where he believes his ancestors' home is located. Once he finds the stone, he hopes to achieve divinity. So Alicia has been roped into this. So then we get, like, you see Alicia jetting off with Hassan, and then it cuts to Egypt, and we learn about this mummy character named Encantu, the living mummy. He was once the proud warrior king of Swarius? I don't know. And basically explains that, like, he has been doomed by this ancient pharaoh. He was captured by the high priest Nephris and specially embalmed. He was unable to die, but after 3,000 years of entombment, he truly lives. And so it shows, like, people shooting him up, and he just keeps on living. So now this mummy character is involved. This is all very weird, but this is sort of what Marvel 2-in-1 is, and I sort of love it. Like 95 issues in, there's only 5 issues left, unfortunately. Don't worry, it just turns into a thing series, but it's, I mean, mummies. Alicia Masters rocking this look for some reason. So yeah, she's now with Nephris, who is, the chief curator at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, who has now become this omnipotent being, and he is planning on becoming a god. And so then it is the unlikely team up in Egypt of Ben Grimm and the Templeworth lady. And she's sort of great. Like the face, the way it's drawn, she's just always pissed. It's perfect. It is, I got to admit, I was not, like, Alan Kupperberg is not a name that I hear kicked around. You know, you got your Neil Adams and your Frank Millers and your Jack Kirby's, but you don't really hear Alan Kupperberg tossed around. But I got to admit, I dig his stuff. Like, it's, you know, it's fun. So they're searching out Alicia. And, you know, it's the typical, usual things that happen in here as they're getting some camels to trek out after this. And eventually they find them. But at the same time, the mummy sort of, it's weird because you've got Ben trying to track down Alicia, and then you've got this mummy character who's pissed at Nephris. So, like, the mummy, like, I think when it was initially set up, I was like, oh, this mummy is going to have to, for some odd reason, fight Ben. But it's like, no, he could give a rip about Ben. It just so happens this is all happening at the same time. So, the mummy shows up right as Alicia finds the Power Stone that they've been looking for. And then it is a all-out brawl between Ben Grimm, the museum curator, who's now a god with this power stone. The tea is not working for me tonight, and Cantu. And so obviously at the very end of this, he goes up against all of them, and it winds up being Alicia who works through this and winds up joining forces with the mummy, the Templeworth, and Thing to defeat the curator, who, as Ben crushes the Power Stone, he doesn't realize, like, as Ben just gets rid of it, doesn't realize that it's also like, oh, this thing, he's like, the gem sustains this body, and so the dude just turns to dust. Which I'm like, I think Ben would have a bigger problem with that than he seems to at the end of it. And I sort of feel bad because it's like, they defeat this dude. He turns to dust, which again, I don't think was Ben's plan. He's just jazzed that he gets Alicia back. The Templesworth lady is just happy that she now has the hat back. And then the mummy, who is like seeking revenge, is sort of just like, and just kind of walks away. So I don't know, because I am, like, I have said this very often, like, horror is not really my thing. I don't know if that character is like, was that created for this one-off thing, or is that something that was in like an old Marvel horror book that I have no idea about? I don't know. So this was a little bit of a weird one. But the thing is like, even the weirdest Marvel 2-in-1 is still an absolute blast. And I am very happy that I have read all 95 issues of this series. I truly am. I thought, it's funny, I got a buddy that used to go to my old shop. His name's Doug. And Doug and I, we haven't in a while, and I need to reach out to him. Get together every now and then for lunch and just kind of catch up. And catch up on what we're reading. And one of his favorite, he was thrilled when he found out that I was like reading Marvel 2-in-1 in its entirety when I was tracking down those issues for the last couple of years. And I told him, and this is, I always thought Marvel 2-in-1 was just 2 anthology stories. Like, I thought it was like I read this for some odd reason as which is dumb because the cover obviously shows the characters interacting. But I read it as like, oh, it's a Thing story, and then it's a Living Mummy story, or it's a Thing story and a Falcon story. You know what I mean? Obviously not the case. It's just another Marvel team-up book. It's just called Marvel 2-in-1 because it's 2 characters in one book. But I thought it was like Marvel Comics Presents just back in the day. So, you know, that's what it is. All these were fun. They were good. 1982 was a solid year. I don't know what happened, like what was going on with the calendar year, because there wasn't anything released. Like the last week's books were September 14th, and this was the 28th, and it just skipped. I'm gonna get hammered with books in October, though. You can tell there was something that happened that caused a delay in books, because October is jam-packed, and October introduces some Marvel graphic novels into the Corner Box Classics pantheon. So we got that going for us. So that is Corner Box Classics for this week. It was a weird one. It was the Living Mummy of Corner Box Classics. Yeah, I will be back this week with a new Comic Wednesday, and then right back into October of 1982, which is very exciting. So thanks for taking this ride with us, and let me know. Obviously, I think every single person who read these 4 comics this week is going to pick Daredevil as their number 1. But if you, like me, are like, Dazzler's great, let me know in the comments. And I will see you on Wednesday. Bye.